I want you to think about where you're driving right now. The same roads, maybe the same playlist you've had on repeat for the last 3 weeks. I know I've been there. Maybe even the same coffee sitting in your cup holder. Same order, same drive through, same everything. And I want you to ask yourself, when did this start feeling like someone else's life? Because I know that feeling. I lived inside it for longer than I want to admit. I had the job, I had the title, I had the salary that was supposed to make everything feel worth it. I was commuting into south of Minneapolis, actually close to the airport, every single morning, swiping my badge, going up the elevator, sitting down at my desk in a high rise office with floor to ceiling windows overlooking the city. And it looked so good from the outside, it really did. But there was this one day, this one ordinary Tuesday, or maybe it was even a Wednesday, it doesn't really matter. I was sitting at my desk, probably in the middle of something completely unremarkable, an email, a report, a meeting I'd already mentally left, and I looked up. Out through that big glass window over the Minneapolis skyline, and I watched a plane cross the sky. And something happened to me that day. I thought about where the plane was going. I thought about the passengers or and the destination, and I followed it with my eyes and with something deeper than my eyes. And then the airplane was gone. And I was still there at my desk, in my office, in my life. And that was the very moment I couldn't unknow. Here's the thing about life that's outgrowing you. It doesn't look broken from the outside. In fact, it looks fine. It looks responsible. It looks like exactly what you're supposed to want. At that time, the corporate job gave me things, real things. I don't want to pretend it didn't. It gave me a paycheck that made me feel like an adult. It gave me a title I could say at dinner parties. It gave me health insurance and a 401k and the kind of stability that everyone around me said I should be grateful for. And I was grateful. I genuinely was. But the gratitude and aliveness are not the same thing. And I had spent years confusing them. Because what the job was costing me, quietly, slowly, the way things erode without you noticing, was my energy, my curiosity, my sense that I was actually building something that was mine. I remember sitting in meetings, good meetings, productive meetings, meetings where real decisions were being made, and feeling like I was watching from behind glass, like I was present in body, but somewhere else entirely in spirit. And the scariest part, I had gotten really good at pretending otherwise. I had perfected the performance of engagement. I knew when to nod, when to contribute, when to look like I cared. And no one knew. Because from the outside, I looked fine. Maybe you know what I'm talking about. Maybe right now on this commute, you're also performing okayness, performing contentment, performing a version of your life that looks reasonable to everyone watching. And maybe underneath that performance, something is very quietly asking, is this it? There's a particular kind of exhaustion that has nothing to do with being tired. It's the exhaustion of living in the wrong direction, of spending your days moving toward things that don't actually call to you. And that exhaustion doesn't go away with sleep. It goes away when you change direction. So for you, what part of your life right now is costing you more than it's paying you? And I'm not talking about money. You don't have to answer out loud. In fact, you don't even have to answer at all. Just let the question be there with you while you drive. I want to go back to that plane. because it wasn't about travel. I know that now. In that moment, staring out of my office window and that plane crossing the Minneapolis sky, I wasn't necessarily fantasizing about a vacation. I wasn't thinking about beaches or cocktails or getting away for a long weekend. What I was feeling was something much bigger and much more inconvenient than that. I was watching a plane and thinking, somewhere up there, someone is in the middle of their life changing. Someone is landing in a city they've never been in or never been to, starting something they've never done. Someone said yes to something that scared them. And they're up there, in the air, between the life that they had and the life that they're choosing. And I wanted to be that person. Not because I wanted to escape, but because I wanted to choose. I wanted to be someone who was actively, deliberately building a life that felt like mine. Not inheriting a life, not sliding into one because it was the path of least resistance, choosing one on purpose. But here's what I did for a very long time instead of choosing. I waited. I told myself I'd leave when I saved enough, when I had a plan, when the timing was better, when things slowed down at work, when I felt ready. And if you ever caught yourself saying any version of those things, I'll do it when, I'll leave after, I just want to wait until, I want you to really hear me on this. The when never comes, not on its own. I sat at that desk for years, waiting. Well, actually, let's think about that. Maybe not for years, for a good solid year, waiting for the when. And then when did not show up because the when is not a moment that arrives. The when is a decision you make. The life you're craving is not waiting for you to be ready. It is waiting for you to be brave enough to be unready and go anyway. What scared me most about leaving wasn't the logistics. It wasn't the money or the plan or the practicalities, honestly, though, yes, all of that was scary too. What scared me, honestly, the most was the identity question. Who was I if I wasn't the woman with the corporate job? Who was I without the title, without the structure that told me what to do every day and gave me a reason to be somewhere and a salary that said I was worth something? I had left the job because my identity, in a way, I didn't even realize until I started imagining leaving it. And when I imagined leaving it, there was this terrifying blankness, this open space where my answer to who are you used to live. And I want to ask you something. And I want you to really let yourself feel into this one. If you stripped away your job title, your role at home, your responsibilities, your obligations, who is the woman underneath all of that? And is she getting any time? Any space? Any oxygen? So let me tell you what actually happened at that time. The day I quit was not a movie moment. There was no dramatic music. I did not stride out of the building with my head held high and my hair blowing in the slow motion. I was completely terrified. I had gone back and forth so many times in my own head that by the time I actually sat down and had the conversation, I had already rehearsed every version of it 1,000 times. And I stumbled over the words. And afterward, I sat in my car in the parking garage and I was in shock. I was in shock, not because I regretted it, but because I had just made the biggest decision in my adult life. And the ground felt completely unstable underneath me, and I didn't know yet what was on the other side. I didn't have it all figured out. I want to be honest with you about that. I had somewhat of a direction. I had a pull. I had that feeling in my gut that had been getting louder for years, that finally got so loud I couldn't keep turning the volume down on it. But a neat, tidy, fully formed plan? No, I didn't even have that. And I'm telling you this because I know that might be where you are right now. Maybe you don't have a plan. Maybe you don't know exactly what the next chapter looks like. Maybe the dream is still blurry and logistics are a complete mystery, and the responsible voice in your head keeps saying, "You can't do this. You're not ready. This is not practical." I hear that voice. I had that voice loudly. But here's what I want you to know. That voice is not wisdom. That voice is fear wearing the costume of wisdom. And fear will keep you at that desk, watching the planes for the rest of your life if you let it. Leaving wasn't the hardest part. The hardest part was admitting to myself that staying was a choice I was making every single day. That no one was keeping me there. That every morning I got up and drove that commute, swiped that badge. I was choosing it. And one day I decided to make a different choice. And I want you to really hear that. Because the story we tell ourselves is that we're stuck, that we can't leave, that the circumstance won't allow it. But mostly we're not stuck. We're choosing. We're choosing to stay. And that is a very different thing. And when you see it that way, something shifts. For you, what choice are you making every day by not choosing? And what is that costing the version of you that is waiting on the other side? I want to talk to you directly for a minute. Not as a storyteller, just as a woman who has been exactly where you are or where you might be right now. If you have been driving to work or driving home from work and feeling this low hum of something is not right, if you have been lying awake at night, running calculations that never quite add up to leaving, but also never quite make peace with staying, if you have been scrolling cities you've never been to, countries that you'd love or haven't never visited, looking at apartments in countries you can't afford yet, imagining a version of your mornings that looks nothing like this one, you're not ungrateful. You are definitely not selfish. You are not having a crisis. Trust me, I've heard that many times. You're not. You are awake. And waking up is always uncomfortable before it's liberating. Always. The wanting more, that is not the problem. That is the point. That restlessness you feel, that is not your enemy. That is your compass. The question is not whether you're crazy for wanting a different life. The question is what you are going to do with that wanting. I don't know where you're driving right now. In fact, I don't know what your life looks like or what's keeping you in it or how far away the dream feels from where you're sitting. But I know, and I know this, part of you is already somewhere else. Part of you is already living the life you're craving. And that part of you, that part is not the problem. That part of you is the whole point. If the women you are becoming could send you a message right now, what do you think she'd say? This was episode 1. I'm really glad you were in the car. I'll see you on the next commute.